we've got a fantastic day of speakers today, and I'd like to introduce our first two, which is Johannes, or JD as is well known, and Rob May, and we're going to talk about the cybersecurity industry. And I think it's so relevant when you talk about influencer marketing, because trust is a significant part of that. So welcome, JD and Rob. I'm going to leave you now to talk all about this session, and then catch up with you in about 20 minutes.
Morning.
Good morning, and thank you for this very kind introduction. I'm sharing my screen so you get a little more info about who we are. I'm really looking forward to this session with my good friend and cybersecurity fellow, Rob May. Rob is based in the UK, runs Ramsec as managing director. I'm in charge of Spearhead management, and we're both very active in cybersecurity and in B2B influencer marketing. And today we will talk about what that will have in common. But before we go into all those details, let us do a fun exercise. Just have a 5-second view at this image and make up for yourself what you see. There is no good or bad answer. It's just about what you see. 3. So be creative. Let your thoughts run free. 2. We're almost there. 1. In case you haven't figured it out, let me help you. I think it is now becoming more clearer what you can see in this image, right? And you will most likely see a cow in this image. And it's very interesting because you also most likely didn't see that before. And the moment I added those lines, you started to see a cow. And now let's go for the big magic trick. I take the lines away. And it's 99.99 and a couple of more nines guaranteed that you still see the cow. And that is just because I helped you out a little bit with those lines to help you see those cows. And it's even better if I only show you the part of the face of the cow that you have seen, you still see the face of the cow. But when I show you the other side where the lines were not, you will most likely not recognize the cow. You will think, oh, that's smudged paper, right? Maybe the same thing that you thought at the beginning when I showed you this. There is, however, something you should know. When at first you looked at this picture and thought, that's just smudged paper, I have no clue what this guy is talking about, you were actually right. You were looking at a piece of smudged paper. And then by adding those lines, I made you think that you did see a cow. And that thought that you did see a cow is so strong that you even see it when I take the lines away. The interesting component in this is that is just driven by emotions. It is an element of surprise. You've maybe thought, why didn't I see that before? And that helps you to always see the cow. But there is more to this. It is also in the wording. I have never said, and if you look back at the recording, it is my evidence, I hope I did it right. I never said that there is a cow. I said you see a cow. So I put you in the driver's seat of misleading yourself. That is a trick that adds to it. And all these elements do something very straightforward. They do create an illusion, which is driven by your emotion, which is so strong that even when you have other facts, you still believe your own emotions. And normally we analyze and we opinionate and we do all kinds of things until we store something as a fact. When we include emotions into that, those emotions overtake everything. And that's where things go wrong, because I promise you this, if you see me 2 months from now, you will most likely not recognize me and you will most likely not remember who I am. But 5 years from now, when I show you this picture, you will still see this cow, and that will never change. And you did that yourself. I see Rob nodding because I did the same trick some 3 years ago with Rob, and Rob sees the cow, knowing that it isn't. Now we're going to build that bridge, because when I said it was a fun exercise, it wasn't a fun exercise. It is a very clear and very direct and confronting demonstration of how, for example, cyber criminals work by influencing you. Because now I did it with a positive emotion. I can also do it with a negative emotion. I can do it in many ways. When I talk about the fantastic smell of freshly brewed coffee in the morning, and I use my storytelling tricks and maybe add an image to it, your brain will remind you of the smell of freshly brewed coffee in the morning. I can do that with a sense of urgency. I can do that with the feeling that you have to respond to something. That is what cyber criminals do. But it's also what we do in B2B influencer marketing. We tell our audience about all the goods about products and services. We explain why they should use it. We explain why they should read our blog posts. It is basically the same thing. So we can use it for good and we can use it for bad. And in the middle is trust. And trust is also what we use in B2B marketing, just like we do in cybersecurity. I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to my friend Rob. Rob, you do a fantastic talk, a TED talk called the Human Firewall. How does this link to what I just demonstrated with See the Cow? And I hope it's not a traumatic memory for you.
No, and that was fascinating actually, because that's the first time I've seen that picture since you showed it to me 3 years ago. And I remember when you put it up on the screen that first time, and I couldn't see the cow until you drew the outlines. And of course, today, just as you said, as soon as it came on the screen, that's all I could see. Once you see the cow, you can't unsee it. And I think you're quite right. The influence that is used in cybercrime, and I talk about this in my TED talk, and it was interesting actually when I did that TED talk on the Human Firewall. I didn't expect it to take off the way it did, and it's now had nearly 500,000 views across TED.com and YouTube combined, and it resonates. And I think it resonates because it surprises people, and a bit like your Show Me the Cow. Once you've seen it, you're surprised at that reaction, and so it is with the Human Firewall. And I'm talking about the importance of cybersecurity, obviously, and it's an issue for all of us. But also, lots of people are just blasé about it, and it's how do we get the message across? Often when I'm giving talks, and especially if I'm giving talks for a cybersecurity audience or a technical audience, people might come expecting that they're not going to learn anything new. But quite often, the feedback that I get at the end was, that's brilliant, because you've just shown us a way to convey that message. You've given us a way to engage with whoever the stakeholders are, whether that's employees or whether that's customers or target customers. And that's the thing, and it's using these different ways of gaining people's imagination to get the message across. And then that whole piece about trust and lack of trust sometimes, but trust is very much at the center of the battle against cybersecurity. It's heart of cyber resilience.
What I really appreciate about your talk, but also about your work at Ramsec, of course, is that you take the human component in the way that we interact with technology and put that in the foreground. So it's not just about technology. There's so many out there talking about technology and all the benefits of technology, which is great and wonderful. But what you and I have in common is that we focus on this human element. And trust is, of course, an important element of that. And we see that also in B2B marketing, because there we basically say, trust me with your brand. Trust me to represent your services and products, and I will be your voice and your face in social media and in other media to represent that. If we then look at the cybersecurity environment, where we at the moment are saying trust nobody, zero trust, right? And in the B2B marketing area, we are basically saying trust me. That almost sounds like a conflict, but from my perspective, it is not, because we do basically exactly the same thing. Based on my reputation, you can trust me in B2B marketing, and based on the current developments in cybersecurity with all kinds of threats surrounding us, we recommend to trust nobody at first, and then build that trust step by step based on proven credentials, etc., etc. Is that the same what you see within your work at Ramsack as a cybersecurity hands-on practitioner?
Yes, and I think the other aspect there that springs to mind, especially when we're talking about the influencer world, is I've got a number of different presences on social media. So Ramsack obviously has its own corporate presence, and that's what we do. We're a team of 90 people delivering cybersecurity and strategic services and so on. So that has a corporate presence. I've then got my own presence. My Rob May on Twitter is me, and it's my opinion and my views. Then, as it happens, I have another profile as well on Thought Provoked, and on Thought Provoked, I try to do just that every day, and it's about positivity and getting people to think differently. And it's very interesting to see the different resonance that you get, dependent on what platform you're using. And Ramsack can put out messaging, and Ramsack's got an audience clearly, but if I talk about that, it gets a very different response. And there's two things. One is, if I share the corporate message, I get one response. But equally, if I talk about it from a personal perspective, and this is my take on it, and this is why this is important, no comparison. No comparison at all in terms of reach. And I think that's critically important when we're talking about influencer marketing, because people trust people. Richard Branson's got millions of more followers than Virgin has, and it's that same. People want to know what individuals think, and it's interesting actually. I was at a talk just last night, and they were talking about fundraising, charity fundraising, and the speaker had been involved in the tsunami. And she said one of the things that they found, there was an iconic photograph, terrible photograph of a baby, dead in the water. And when they used that photograph and it went viral, the fundraising went through the roof. In the next round, they sort of used photos of groups of refugees, and it didn't get anywhere near the response. If you make it personal, good or bad, actually, but make it about one person and their views, it has much greater reach.
Yeah, it's definitely, and you see that across all social media. There is the corporate presence, there is the commercial presence, and then there is the personal presence there. And the personal presence is basically much more based on a dialogue. I am informing someone about something, and they can appreciate that, they can agree, they can disagree, they can have, but they feel much more involved. That's one side. But it also allows you to have a conversation and to get feedback and interactions. And that is, I see the same. For me personally, there's not much different between my business presence and my personal presence, because I bring that all together. Of course, I have my Spearhead management account, but that is very low profile compared to what I do on my personal accounts at Johannes Drooghaag on LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. So there is not that much difference, but I always encourage people to start that conversation, because I want that feedback. I want to also know, hey, I like this and I did not like that. That is a very important thing. And I do not think that you can create that as a corporate or a company profile. And we have many examples of that. We also have Gary Vee, and Gary Vee is Gary Vee with everything and all the companies and all the investment, but it is Gary Vee, and he does that in a very authentic way, and not everybody appreciates the way he uses language, let me put it like that. But it is what it is, and he has a very high engagement rate, and almost everyone responds to almost everything he does. And the second thing that he says quite often is, not everything works, but I try, and I test, and I do things that just to see if they work. And that is also something which is an important message for B2B influencer marketing. What works today doesn't automatically work tomorrow, but you need to stay active, and you need to make all those steps to figure out what does work. And you also have to keep in mind that this too is a matter of trust. It is a matter of emotions. It is a matter of timing, right? And all that together makes your campaign a success or not. So there is not a single element that will make things happen for you. The same applies to cybersecurity. If you just buy the gadget, you will not reach cybersecurity. You have to involve the people. You have to make it personal. You have to make sure that they understand it. And the same thing with B2B influencer marketing.
Yeah.
If you look back at what we discussed today, Rob, the core message, I think, is trust. And I think the core message is a personal approach to how you want to bring that trust forward. Is that working for you on all profiles, or is your Rob May the leader? And I already know the answer, but it's a trick question. But more for the audience. What is your leading profile, Rob?
I mean, for me, it's me on Twitter or on LinkedIn. They're my two most successful. And I think you're right. It's about engaging in conversation. I think what sometimes people forget is it's social networking. And in social networking, you have to be social. And that means you have to talk. And I often think about this when you're doing social networking. If this was physical networking, if you walk into a room and you want to spend time with a bunch of people, if the only thing you do is say, here's the brochure, here's my card, here's my corporate message, people soon move away from you. You've got to be social. You've got to engage in conversation. And when I make a statement or a comment about something, same as you, and we see it time and time again, not everyone will agree with you every time, but that's great. You're engaging in conversation, and people can trust you, and people can respect your opinion or even our differences, because we don't always take the same approach every single time. So yeah, I think that's absolutely right. But that trust is such a high value asset when it comes to this type of work.
Robert, I think that wraps up our session perfectly. We are approaching the end, and on the topic of trust, I want to say two things. First of all, trust me. I think I know what I'm doing when I'm messing with your mind by showing you a cow which isn't there, and then you will never be able to forget that you see that cow. So trust me in that, please. And secondly, trust is something that we have to earn together, and that includes a lot of conversation. That includes respectfully disagreeing, and that also includes that, as you mentioned, social networking has to be social first and networking second. That is, I think, a very good closure, Rob. Thank you for your insights today, and thank you for your thoughts. And for the audience, if you have not seen the Human Firewall yet, please go to YouTube or the TED website, look it up, because this should be the starting point of your cybersecurity and cyber resilience journey. Thank you very much, Rue, Gordon. Back to you.
Well, first of all, say that was a fantastic session. I have to say, having seen that cow now, I can't sort of remove it from my mind. It's really, really interesting stuff. And also, Rob, you were saying how many people follow you more than they do the corporate brand, and I think that's at the core of influencer marketing, isn't it? We trust the opinions of others more than we do, you know, some of the traditional brands, which is of course why it's so effective. And trust is at the cornerstone of influencer marketing, right the way across the age spectrum. It's not just about younger people, it's right the way through, isn't it? So thank you so much for your session this morning, guys. Really appreciate that.